Okay, so to create a Google form, go to forms.google.com, forms.google.com, and it's going to take you to the Google Forms homepage, and this is what the Google Forms homepage is. So it'll list all your Google Forms. You can see I have a large amount of Google Forms. To create a new form, in the lower right-hand corner there is a plus sign. Click on the plus sign. It's going to open up the new Google Forms for you. So the new Google Forms is fun. If you're not familiar with the old, you should be able to adapt to it pretty easily. So just go over it real quick for you. Over here is the title of your form. If you just click in there, you can type in the title of your form. So I'm going to call this Unit Test Simple Machines. Over here, this is the color palette. You can change the color palette of your form, and it's just going to change the header color, or you can do an image. And Google has supplied some images here, some, party, yay, whatever. I'm a big fan of the other ones that have other ones that have just patterns. I'm a pattern lady, so I'm going to do this one. Okay. The eyeball is to preview form. So here's where you see your live form. So you'll see, and I can actually take the form right now. Okay? I'm going to X that window out, and it tabs you out into a new window. The form settings is super important because you're going to want to change some of your settings. So the default is that anybody in the Hilton Central School District can view your form. If you were planning on sending this home to parents or to survey parents, you would want to change it to anyone. So because the default is anyone in the Hilton Central School District, they have to have a Hilton login. If you're using this for quizzes in your classroom, it's fine, just the way it is. I like to check this, automatically collect one the Hilton's username. And this will give you your student's username so that you can email back their grades once you've graded their form. It's pretty awesome. The confirmation page is the default message that is received when they submit a form. So you could say unit test completed, whatever you wanted. Okay? I don't want students to be able to take the test again, so I'm going to uncheck that. I want them to be able to just do it once and submit. I don't want them to be able to take it again. Okay? You would be able to allow them to go back and edit their responses if you wanted that to be an option, but you could check that and see the responses that they come in. So if you were just polling them, you could do this one too. So you can also choose to shuffle the question order so that all the questions are shuffled throughout the test so that no two tests are the same. You can do that. Or you can have them have a progress bar. You can also shuffle the answer order within the questions, and I'll show you where that is. I'm going to hit save. So here's my unit test on simple machines. So the first question I always like to have in my tests are short answer questions and a spot for their name. Their username is going to be collected, but I'd like them to put their name in there as well. Okay? So, and that first question is just in the form right there. Okay? The form description could be the directions. So So when I click in here, I have this little bar that's going to float down with me. And this bar is to add questions to my form. And here's the types of questions that I have. If I add a question, I can do multiple choice, short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, checkboxes, drop down, choose from a list, a scale, rate yourself, a grid, choose out of this grid a date or a time. Okay, those are the options for question orders. You can make questions required, which I highly recommend, which means they can't submit their form until they've answered all of the questions. And then under here, some more options. You could do a hint text for short answer questions or data validation. It has to match this, and so forth. This icon here is to duplicate your questions. In this case, we're not actually going to duplicate because we're going to copy and paste from your quiz. And then this option is to just delete the question. Okay? So I clicked add a question. So I have a new question, and now I have this Simple Machines unit test that Sherry and Kristen emailed me, so I can click and copy and paste right out of their quiz into Google Forms. So question 1, paste. I can't import my questions, but I can copy and paste in and out. I can also copy and paste out options. Now, you have 2 options. Their quiz has A's and B's in it, like A, B, C, D options. If you want those in there, then you can paste them in with it. If you don't want them in there, you paste them without it. The benefit to not having them in there is that under here you have the option to shuffle the option order, so the options can shuffle around. But if you do it A, B, C, D, then it's going to shuffle them out of order. So you don't want to really shuffle those orders if you're going to do it that way. You can have a hint text if you need one, and this is a more advanced feature we'll talk about later. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, I'll just copy and paste. I'll show you how I can copy and paste in, and I'm going to let you decide whether or not you wanted your option order to be shuffled. So I'm going to make this required, but I'm not going to shuffle my option order because my A and my B will get mixed up. So then if I add a new question, it'll just continue to do multiple choice questions. So I can change the question type by just selecting a different type up here. So I add a new question. I come get question number 2. And I paste my answer options in there. And again, keep in mind, since I'm pasting the A, B, C, D in there, I don't want to shuffle my option order. And it's a helpful tool to have that in there because that's how the students' exams are going to look, especially as they get older. So with the 1, 2, 3, 4 and the stuff that's on Regents exams. So it's really up to you. Just keep that in mind as you're building your form. Okay. So I'm just doing a little bit of formatting as I'm pasting in because some of it's not pasting in super nice. And then I'm just copying and pasting in here. So it's not perfectly amazing, but it's pretty awesome, and the grading feature is going to make it even more awesome for you. So, and especially if you're using Google Classroom, this now integrates perfectly with Google Classroom. So I highly recommend that you use it. I'm just making all of these questions required. If you're sharing this with one another, so you're sharing quizzes between each other, you can change each other's settings. I'll show you how you can add collaborators. So in this case, this is Sherry and Kristen's quiz, so they should both have a copy of this quiz that they can reuse if they wanted to. So you see I'm just clicking the add button. I'm typing in my number. You don't necessarily have to have a number in there if you don't want them in there. So at the end of their quiz, we have a couple of short answer questions, which is a great example because I want to show you. So you can grade with Flubaroo multiple choice, short answer, like a fill in the blank. It'll grade that perfectly because you can tell it not to be case sensitive. You can also grade like the checkbox and so forth, but the shorter answer ones where there's like paragraph text, you're going to have to choose to hand grade it on your own, but now you have the option within Flubaroo to choose that. So I'll show you what that looks like when we run Flubaroo over this. So here we go. So I have question 8 in here now, and I'm all done with this question. So now they have a couple of real life applications, and it's like a whole different section of the test. You can add what's called a section break. So section break here in your forms, you can add a video, you can add an image, you can add a title or a description in the middle, and then the question tool. So I'm going to choose add a section, and we're going to call this section 2 real life applications. And you can add a description if you want, and then we're just going to add a question underneath it, okay? And so the question here is now a paragraph. I'm going to do paragraphs so the box that they have is a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to go grab that question. So think about blah, 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 copy, paste. And I'm going to make it required. Add one more question. It's a paragraph. And I'm going to do the same thing. Copy, paste. Okay, and make it required. Once I'm done with my form, I'm ready to send my form to my students. So there's a couple of ways that you can send your form. You can get a link to it and just email out a link by clicking send. If you click send, you get this little email area that you can choose now. You didn't get it before. You can send it with like a description. Here's your quiz. You can also just get a link, and you can post the link somewhere, and you also can get an embed code if you had like a blog or a website you wanted it in. With Google Classroom now, you don't even have to use this button at all. You can actually just add it as a file from your Google Drive to Google Classroom. We'll show you that. So a couple of other tidbits here. Under the 3 dots in the upper right, you get this More option. And you can make copies of your forms and redo them. So now that you had your formatting done, you wanted to just change the text of the question, you can make a copy of your form. You can trash it. You can get a pre-filled link, which would autofill some of the answers if you wanted that. Print it. This Add Collaborators feature is really important because you can share, not just share, but not share by sending, but share, you both have rights to the form so that you can have copies of it. So that's an important feature there. So I'm actually going to add some collaborators on this one. I'm going to add Sherry Giardino, because it's her quiz, and Kristen Brewer. And they have edit rights on this because it's their form. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to email them anyway, so I don't need to send them a link. So I'm going to click done. So that's important. A couple of other housekeeping things. Responses. So when I click on the Responses tab, this used to be in a separate location, and now you'll see, as the students are taking their quiz, you'll see their responses populating in here, and it'll kind of break down your questions. It's pretty awesome. We're already accepting responses. But we want our responses to go into a Google spreadsheet. So we want to click on this icon here, and we want to create a new spreadsheet for it. And we're going to name it exactly what the unit test is called. I'm going to click Create. It's going to open that spreadsheet up for me in a new tab. I lied to you. My computer is completely frozen. There we go. And here is the spreadsheet, okay? So as the responses come in from the form, they're going to populate here. And this is where you're going to run Flubaroo on your form. Okay, I'm going to come back to my form for a second. So I've got my questions, and I'm good to go. And that's Google Forms in a nutshell. Pretty cool, huh? So now I want to take my form with the answers. So I'm going to click on Preview My Form. And I'm going to call this the answer key. And Sherry and Kristen, you're going to have to forgive me because I'm going to do the best that I can to answer this, but I may get a couple wrong. So, purpose of the simple machine. So I'm just going through. I'm just going to answer all of these questions. Okay, so I'm just taking the quiz and I'm doing it answer, answer, answer. So now I get to the second part and I can answer these questions. So if you wanted to like enter in as the person who's putting in the answer key, you want to enter in some like words that you're looking for, you could do that, but I'm just going to do long responses. So you're going to grade these by hand anyway, so you'll see it. And I don't really need to check this, so I'm just going to hit submit. So now I've submitted my answer key. So if I come back to my Google Sheet, you'll see my answer key is here. If I have answered some of these wrong, you can just come in here and change it in here in the Google Sheet. Just change this. So if it wasn't D and it's B, you can just change this to B. Just make sure that the formatting matches how it is on the Google Sheet here, which is with the space and so forth. Okay? So I took the quiz as me, and I'm going to then take the quiz as a student just so that you can see how the grading works again, because I know we talked about it. So I'm going to come back to my quiz, and I'm going to hit preview again, and this time I'm going to be test student. And you guys can do this too to practice. You should definitely practice using Flubaroo and grading your quizzes. So I'm just going to guess. I'm going to get some right and some wrong. Okay, and then for this case, I'm just going to put it in there. Okay, so now my test student has submitted their test as well. So you can have a whole bunch of test students in here. Awesome, test student. Okay, and so now I'm going to grade my form. So if I come up to add-ons, I want to install an add-on which is called Flubaroo. I already have a ton of add-ons, as you can see in my Google spreadsheets. If you don't see Flubaroo here, go to Get Add-ons. It's usually in the top here because it's so awesome, and you can add it. And I think your button is blue and it says Add. So go ahead and add Flubaroo, and it'll give you like a little progress reel, and it'll say Flubaroo's been added. And then when you come back up here, you can go to Flubaroo and you can say Enable Flubaroo in this sheet. So once you've enabled Flubaroo in this sheet, it's going to say, it's been updated and needs your permission to run. I'm going to give it access because I haven't run in a long time. It's working, and it's now been enabled. So I hit OK. And I'm going to come back up to add-ons, and I'm going to hover over Flubaroo, and now I have options. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is grading the assignment. So if I click grade the assignment, I get this window that pops up, and it wants to know how do I want to break down my quiz. Okay, so the username identifies the student, the name identifies the student, that's fine, and then how many points are your multiple choice questions going to be out of. So you can change this. Normal grading is fine, and then how many points do I want it out of. I have options to skip grading it. You know, if I want to make it a bonus question, I can skip grading it and add points in if I want, or I can grade it by hand, which is what we're going to need to do for the new long response answers that are at the bottom. So I'm going to leave these normal, and then I'm going to change these to grade by hand, and maybe I'm going to make these 5-point questions. Grade by hand, make them 5-point questions. It's up to you how you break down your grades, and then I'm going to click continue. Wants to know where the answer key is. If my answer key is wrong, please change it and click continue. And then it's all done. How awesome is that? My assessment is already graded. It's so great. So it added a new worksheet at the bottom of the sheet here called grades, and Flubaroo gives you some tips here. Those are some of the advanced tips that we'll talk about later. This is very basic. I have an assessment and I graded it. So I'm coming through here, and now because I have 2 questions that I graded by hand, I can either grade them here by giving points, but I'd have to toggle back to see what the students submitted here. So I can also come in here and use the add-on now and hover over Flubaroo, I can actually grade the questions by hand right here. And this is really nice. You'll see your students list. Because I only have one student here, I'm selected, but I would navigate through my list of students. I select the question I want to grade. I see the student's response here. I can review my answer key if I need to. I can add individual feedback. And I can add the point value and then set the grade. And then that'll go into the spreadsheet. And then I can change to the question. So now I want to click on question 2. And I see the other answer, and maybe I want to change this to a 4 instead and hit set grade. Those are automatically going to get set into the spreadsheet, and then I can put that in for the grade and see how their percentage came up here. Okay, so when you want to email out grades, you can come back to the add-ons, go to Flubaroo, and then you can say email grades, and it'll email out your grades to your students. How awesome is that? So cool. So let me know how it goes, and I'll be back to talk about more Flubaroo bonuses.